they still had a predetermined agenda to keep Ruby Dhalla off of the ballot, to
Why?
keep Ruby Dhalla out of the debate stage, because they did not want anyone challenging their front runner, their blue-eyed boy, Mark Carney.
The Liberal Party of Canada has announced that Ruby Dhalla has been disqualified from the Liberal leadership race, and she is not happy about it. She may be declaring herself to be the victim, but there's more to Ruby Dhalla than meets the eye.
Let's take a look.
Thank you for joining us. Have you received official word yet from the Liberal Party on your disqualification from this race?
I haven't as of yet. It's quite interesting that I turned on CBC News and read your headline that I was being disqualified from the race. I checked my email, my campaign team has, and as of this moment, we have not received any indication from the Liberal Party as to that type of decision, which to me is very alarming and very shocking that there are these types of leaks, from sources that are occurring.
Okay, so right off the bat, that is completely inappropriate that you have a leadership candidate that is finding out as she is joining CBC for an interview and she sees on their ticker that she's been disqualified, and that's when she's learning about it.
Yeah, I think you can say no matter what your politics are, it's really disrespectful for a party, any party, to be telling the media their inner dealings, i.e. who is disqualified, before the candidate finds out themselves.
Yeah, it's bad form, it's classless. That's the Liberal Party for you.
I've just received a statement from the Liberal Party, Ms. Dhalla. I swear this just came into my email. It's a statement by Azam Ismail, who is the Liberal Party of Canada National Director, on Ruby Dhalla's candidacy for leader of the Liberal Party. Today, the Liberal Leadership Vote Committee unanimously made the decision to disqualify Ruby Dhalla. The decision followed an extensive process and review, including interviews, questionnaires, and an opportunity for Dr. Dhalla to directly address the committees. After a thorough investigation, the Leadership Vote Committee and the Leadership Expense Committee, sitting jointly, unanimously determined that Dr. Dhalla was in breach of 10 violations of the National Liberal Leadership Rules, Leadership Vote Rules, and the Leadership Expense Rules. The violations include concerns about alleged violations of the Canada Elections Act, certain other election finance matters, non-disclosure of material facts, and inaccurate financial reporting. The Leadership Vote Committee determined that the violations were extremely serious and accepted the recommendation of the Chief Electoral Officer and disqualified Dr. Dhalla under Section 8 of the National Leadership Rules.
That's very significant. Yeah, 10 alleged violations.
That's a laundry list.
Yeah. I do feel for her because she's live on television with CBC, the Liberal mouthpiece, right? And she's being told in no uncertain terms, you are disqualified. I think she probably handled it as best she could have. I mean, she couldn't just break down and start crying on live TV. That wouldn't be good, right?
Well, so yeah, and maybe she's just saying, you know what? Maybe she thinks this is even an attempt by the Liberal Party to embarrass her. I don't know.
Could be, but I think maybe the news of the disqualification is news, but I think she may have suspected it was coming because ordinarily they don't just kick you out, especially in this case, and we'll learn this very soon, is that it sounds like there was almost a jury that had asked Ruby some questions about the irregularities in her campaign. They had conducted an interview with her, so she may have suspected that this was coming.
Well, and what led up to that was also 27 questions that she was sent, and this was in the news a few days ago, by the Liberal Party. And there were some allegations of maybe there were allegations of foreign interference in there. The Liberal Party said no, there wasn't. But there was a bunch of questions that she had to answer to address some concerns by the Liberal Party. So, yeah, Tanya might be right. Maybe she saw this coming and was just like, oh, okay, well, here it comes. But still, why is CBC getting this email?
Right. Why is the news anchor on CBC being the one to tell her?
Yeah, like, what a clown show.
I'm assuming this is the first you are hearing this statement. What do you say that it was unanimous, that there were 10 violations of those various rules?
Well, I think it speaks to the state of the Liberal Party of Canada that a candidate who is running to become leader of the party, who is running to become prime minister in our country, is finding out that she has been disqualified on air from an email that the media outlet that she is interviewing with has received. So it is very alarming and very shocking. It is certainly not surprising, because I think the Liberal Party of Canada was seeing exactly what our internal polls are telling us, that my campaign and my team, we were neck to neck with a front runner in the race. They did not want me to go on to that debate stage in Montreal. They certainly did not want me on that ballot. And the Liberal Party of Canada wanted to complete the coronation of Mark Carney. All of the allegations that you have mentioned have been, that you have spoken about. They are completely false. They are fabricated. And I will not allow the Liberal Party of Canada, or anyone for that matter, to smear my name or to smear the name of thousands of volunteers in our campaign.
You said you had an opportunity to present to the committee that made this decision today, correct? What did you say to them?
Yes.
What did you say?
On the committee, they had members from the voting committee, from the expense committee. This committee has been kept secret from all of the candidates. The candidates have been asking who are the members of this committee. It wasn't until today, when I actually presented to them via a virtual call, that I was even made aware of who the individuals were. Neither was time taken for anyone to even introduce themselves. But regardless, no matter what we said and what proof was provided that these violations, were not committed, that this was simply false and fabricated breaches that the party is alleging, they still had a predetermined agenda to keep Ruby Dhalla off of the ballot, to
Why?
keep Ruby Dhalla out of the debate stage, because they did not want anyone challenging their front runner, their blue-eyed boy, Mark Carney.
Okay. So there was a lot there. So first, there's some allegations of racism, which is interesting, coming from within the Liberal Party.
Not really. I mean, the left always cries about racism.
No, but it's always interesting when the left accuses itself of racism. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but I said stuff like this would happen, that they would start to eat themselves.
Yeah.
The closer we got to the actual leadership election.
Right. So that's the first part. The second part is she says, according to her internal polling, she was neck and neck with Mark Carney. Now, here's the thing, folks. It's hard to know what polls to trust out there other than the conventional ones, which is going to be your Abacus and Innovative Research right now. So I'm not even going to go by any of the liberal polls that are out there saying, oh, well, Carney's up here and everyone's down here. Who knows? Well,
and for the record, politicians can and do pay these pollsters to conduct internal polls.
Yep.
So many of them are done by reputable pollsters with reputable methods. Some of them not so much. It also depends on your sample size. If you've only got a sample size of 500 people, that's not really considered enough to provide a good representative sample.
Well, and are they polling, the region where you have the most supporters? If so, that's going to be skewed,
Yeah. So, I mean, there's all sorts of factors that go into polls, and we've discussed this before. But it's not outside the realm of possibility that Ruby's campaign may have hired pollsters to conduct internal research.
Now, what I will say, and I will agree with her on this point, is that I think she would be the candidate that would challenge verbally Mark Carney the most in the English debate. And when I mean that, I mean be most aggressive.
Yeah, I think she's extremely well spoken, and she's definitely got that going for her. Unfortunately, as we know, she doesn't speak French, or doesn't speak French well enough to participate in the French debate. And the Liberals are the what do they call themselves? The official party of bilingualism.
Yeah.
So again, you could say maybe that is why she was disqualified, but I think there's something bigger here. There being 10 allegations, plus they also hinted that there were allegations that went against the Canada Elections Act. That's a criminal offense. If you break that act, you could go to jail.
Yeah.
So these are very serious allegations.
Hey, I mean, you make that allegation. You say you have thousands of people in your volunteers in your organization. I've not seen any polling anywhere that puts you neck and neck with Mark Carney. If anything, he has a commanding lead over even Chrystia Freeland and Karina Gould, who in some form are second and third amongst Liberals and amongst Canadians. I mean, what are you basing this on, that you were the threat to Mr. Carney?
Well, I'm the only one that was the outsider in the race. I am the only candidate that has not been an advisor to the current administration. I am the only candidate that has not served as a minister or a member of parliament. I am the only one that was an outsider that was continuing to challenge the front runner, continuing to challenge and speak out for the establishment, and also bringing forward policies which I thought were very important to bring our party back to the center, to return our party back into the hands of the membership and the grassroots. And when I talk about these polling numbers, this was and is going to be a preferential ballot where people mark 1, 2, 3, or 4. And right. Even though people may be supporting Mark Carney as their number one choice, they were looking at supporting Ruby Dhalla for their second choice, along with the other thousands of members that our team had signed up. And I think that the Liberal Party must have felt some sort of threat to the establishment, to their coronation that they wanted for their front runner.
So there's a bunch of things she said in there. The one thing that she kind of misspoke on is she said, I'm the only candidate that hasn't been a cabinet minister or member of parliament. Well, she was a member of parliament, so that's actually she
right.
misspoke.
But she wasn't during Trudeau's reign, right?
Right.
The last time she was in office was 2011.
Right. She was not a backbencher or participant in any way under Justin Trudeau. But the one thing that I will give her credit for, because this is absolutely true, you can see it on her social media, she was very critical of the other candidates, specifically Mark Carney. Her policy stances were conservative.
Yeah, I think she's the most conservative out of all of the Liberal candidates, for sure. But
we've seen all of the Liberal candidates steal from the Conservative platform, so not entirely surprising. She also goes on to say, well, all of these allegations were false. None of them happened, which is interesting, because we actually took a look at this, and it looks like the Globe and Mail actually interviewed Ruby Dhalla, and that's not entirely accurate. So let's take a look at that. So this is from the first part of the Globe and Mail article that we're going to be looking at today.
In a statement, the party's national director, Azam Ismail, said the leadership vote committee determined that Ms. Dhalla's campaign had committed 10 violations of Liberal leadership electoral rules and expenses. Quote, the violations include concerns about alleged violations of the Canada Elections Act, certain other election finance matters, non-disclosure of material facts, and inaccurate financial reporting, end quote, he said in a statement. Mr. Ishmael said the committee considered the violations to be, quote, extremely serious, end quote, and raised their concerns with the party's chief electoral officer, Beatrice Keller-Raffoul, who recommended the Liberals disqualify Ms. Dhalla. The committee vote was unanimous. Ms. Dhalla has denied any wrongdoing. She told the Globe and Mail she had a meeting with party officials early Friday afternoon and insisted she did nothing improper. Quote, I said all these irregularities are made up. They are fictitious. We have provided all the information to rectify each and every irregularity, end quote, she said in an interview. She said the party raised concerns about 6 couples who used the same credit card to donate to the campaign, as well as volunteers who also worked for the Dhalla group of companies, which she is CEO and president. The couples share joint bank accounts, and the volunteers signed affidavits declaring they are not being paid by Ms. Dhalla to work on her campaign, she said.
Okay, so I'm looking at this objectively. Ruby, you can't say all these irregularities are made up, as in there are no irregularities, and then go on to say, oh, well, with regards to these irregularities, here's the explanation for it. So they're not made up. You're actually acknowledging what these irregularities are. So your first accusation that the Liberal Party is literally making all this stuff up, that doesn't hold water, because you're actually admitting that there were irregularities.
But this is the reason for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, whether they want to accept the reason for that is another question. Like, I don't know 6 different couples that share the same bank account. Do you?
I don't know 6 different couples, or I don't even know one couple, to be perfectly honest, that share a credit card. Most of them, you'll have like the spouse 1 will have the credit card in their name, and then spouse 2 will be the secondary on that account.
Yeah. Never mind 6 couples, meaning 12 people sharing 1 credit card, 1 bank account. Really? I don't buy that. Judge Judy logic. It doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it's not true. Now, maybe I'm just ignorant, and maybe there's going to be some people out there that can correct us. By all means, because that would be very interesting to understand how that situation would come about. 6 separate couples sharing the same bank account. Anyhow, then it was actually reported that there was a bunch of people that actually work for Ruby Dhalla and her companies that were also volunteers at the campaign. Now, the allegations were that they were being paid to work for her campaign.
Which you're not allowed to do. It's volunteer, right?
Now, they may be looking at that. Again, this is just objectively, folks. They may be looking at that and saying, okay, hold on. So if they were volunteering during the workday and they're being paid a salary, were they getting paid for that day anyway? And now they're just working for the campaign?
That's a really good point, actually. If you're getting paid a salary and then you're doing work outside of your job, or even if you're volunteering outside of your job while you're getting paid by your job, I mean, that's time theft. So is that what's happening here? We don't know, because we don't have access to all the information that committee had access to.
And we don't have access to all the information that Ruby Dhalla provided the committee and the justification that she provided. So we're just looking at what has been reported, what we see, and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So let's continue.
Ms. Dhalla said another issue involved $21,000 of withheld deposits because the, quote, Liberal Party changed the link to those contributions. I can't control what donors are doing, end quote. Ms. Dhalla said the Liberal Party also wanted the bank accounts of third-party vendors, which she provided to, quote, prove I have nothing to hide. I also gave them my cell phone records. I have nothing to hide, end quote. However, CBC News reported that Ms. Dhalla was accused of failing to disclose the involvement of a non-Canadian citizen in her campaign, which the party alleges would amount to foreign interference if it happened during an election period. The Globe reported Thursday, citing 2 Liberal sources, that the party sent questions to Ms. Dhalla that raised concerns about possible foreign interference and alleged campaign irregularities.
So this is allegedly referring to a mysterious, very wealthy person, not of Canadian citizenship, that was on Ruby Dhalla's campaign team advising her how to proceed. That's where this comes into play. So the question is that true? Were they giving her money?
Were they giving her advice? Were they involved in the campaign? It's not appropriate to have non-Canadian citizens involved in the campaign of Canadian politicians. It's just not.
Now, she's saying, no, 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 no. It would be interesting to see where the proof is, or the proof to support the allegations, or the evidence to support the allegations from the Liberal Party that this was actually happening, right? So, again, we don't have a lot of information to go on. We're just parsing this out as we see it.
You say you are an outsider. One of the allegations against you is that there was an outsider, as in a non-Canadian citizen, playing a role in your campaign, involved in the direction and support of the campaign and financially contributing to your campaign. Are you aware of a wealthy non-Canadian citizen playing a role in your campaign and donating to your campaign?
First of all, there has been no donations. Again, these are false and fabricated stories that are being made up. We have provided them with all of the information in regards to this, but if the false and fabricated, and fake allegations continue, we have seen that they will say whatever it takes, and they did by having me disqualified in this race so that I would not participate in the debates in Montreal on Monday and Tuesday.
But is there an extremely wealthy non-Canadian citizen supporting your campaign?
No, there is not.
There is nobody from outside the country who's not a Canadian providing any kind of material support, even if it's donations of things, advising you, giving you direction in any way whatsoever. Because this is one of the allegations that I am told you were presented with. You know what I'm talking about here, I assume, Ms. Dhalla, and that was discussed at this committee this afternoon.
Yes, it was. And I can share with you that my candidacy was historic. My candidacy was historic because I was the first woman, of color. I was one of the first women of an immigrant community to seek the leadership for the Liberal Party of Canada, to become Canada's Prime Minister. And I had thousands of well-wishers across the world who were excited about this movement and this moment for our party and our country.
I find it extremely interesting that Dhalla had confirmed that there was no non-citizens providing donations to her campaign, but when she was pressed on the question twice about whether any non-Canadians were advising her, she dodged the question both times.
Well, and she was asked the question, well, because I know this was discussed at the committee that you were at, and she says yes it was, and then pivot to I'm a woman of color. And
right, classic Liberal tactics of I'm the victim, feel bad for me, I am discriminated against because of something beyond my control. Really what we just want is the question answered. So
this is where I'm not too confident in Ruby's answer, because if it was as you say, then
it's
you'd be able to say,
no.
Yes, this was brought up and this is what I said.
It's a simple no. Nobody of non-Canadian citizenship was working on my campaign or advising me in any capacity. Right.
So, and we've seen Trudeau do this many times, right, folks? When he's asked a question, and we've seen the Conservatives do this time and time again in committee when they ask a question and they know the answer. Michael Barrett, Michael Cooper, Garnet Jennings, Larry Prock, all of them, Stephanie Kuzy, Kelly Block, like you can keep naming them, and you've seen it time and time again where they ask the question and they know the answer, and you have a Liberal minister, Justin Trudeau, or somebody else that's a Liberal in front of them, they start talking about something else completely different because they don't want to answer the question.
Right.
That's what we just saw, folks. So I'm not too inclined to believe her on that one. Now, here's some other things that people should consider. What you may not know about Ruby is that she was accused about 16 years ago, and this is towards the end of her political career the first time, of being a really nasty person. And she was accused of this by a couple of caregivers that she actually had hired to take care of her mom. Here's a news article from back in 2009 when this all went down.
Storm erupts over Ruby Dhalla and the nannies. Ottawa is facing pressure to launch a legal probe of Liberal MP Ruby Dhalla after caregivers hired by her family claim they were mistreated. The Star reported yesterday that two nannies, Magdalene Gordo, 31, and Richelyn Tongson, 37, have publicly complained that they were abused while working as live-in caregivers for Dhalla and her family. They alleged during a public forum 2 weeks ago with 2 Ontario cabinet ministers that their passports were seized. They worked unpaid overtime and were forced to do non-nanny jobs such as washing cars, shining shoes, and cleaning family-owned chiropractic clinics.
So that doesn't sound good.
No, and one of the nannies, at least, that I saw was actually brought to committee and testified in a roughly 2-hour committee meeting. Now, I haven't had an opportunity to actually watch the committee meeting, but I do have the footage that I was able to find on the subject. And it's very interesting to me that the nanny of a member of parliament would be brought to parliament to testify.
Right. Now, the other interesting thing, well, put it this way. The Toronto Star wasn't the only paper to report on this.
Ms. Dhalla, Ms. Gordo said, continually asked for her passport, but she refused to hand it over. At one point, she said Ms. Dhalla became so angry with her for refusing to give her the documents that the MP said, quote, "If you don't give me your passport, I will never sponsor you," end quote. Richelyn Tongson, another of the caregivers employed by the Dhallas, broke down in tears during her testimony, saying she could not be sent back to the Philippines because her husband is unemployed and her 4 children would go without food if not for her salary. But Ms. Dhalla took her passport, her birth certificate, and her marriage certificate, Ms. Tongson said, and she said she was worried that she would be removed from Canada. Ms. Tongson says she eventually was given the documents after an outside agency intervened.
So that article was actually based on the committee hearing that Tanya was talking about, where the caregiver describes the alleged abuse from Ruby Dhalla and what ended up happening about this. Well, it sounds like what ended up happening is the 2 caregivers got a lawyer and filed a civil suit against Ruby Dhalla, which was then settled. Now, from another newspaper from that time, they actually covered the civil case of this, and this is what it said.
Brampton Small Claims Court Judge Eric Nadler ordered Tongson to accept the $5,000 payment as compensation for unpaid overtime. Tongson was originally seeking $15,000 in damages against Dhalla, with her mother Tavinder and brother Neil as co-defendants.
So, obviously the judge found that there was some mistreatment and some withholding of wages that went on, and ordered Dhalla to pay $5,000. So, that's just an interesting aspect to consider in all of this. But here's the thing, folks. Whether you like Ruby Dhalla, whether you don't like Ruby Dhalla, unfortunately, she was the only one that was really coming out headstrong against Mark Carney in this Liberal race. It'll be interesting to see what Frank Baylis does. He seems like a very laid-back, stoic individual. I don't expect anything sensational about him.
And Jamie Batiste is still in the race, is he not? Or
No,
has he dropped out?
He dropped out and threw his support right behind Mark Carney.
Oh, well, there you go. Like, he was so insignificant that I didn't even hear about the dropping out.
Yeah. So, so now you're down to Mark Carney, Krista Freeland, Karina Gould, and Frank Baylis. Frank Baylis is your token Liberal outsider.
Well, not really, because again, he was a backbench MP. I don't recall what year. Was he under Trudeau? It was in 2015 he got elected?
It was a while ago. He served
quite a
one
while
term.
ago. Yeah.
So he served one term. He wasn't there for any real significance. So, anyhow, he's not a serious contender in this. He's not charismatic. He hasn't been on media. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's trying to promote his new business. I don't know.
But I just want to say that these allegations against Ruby are quite serious. If you violate the Canada Elections Act, you could face jail time. And I mean, that's a criminal offense. That's serious stuff here. I don't think it's right that this disqualification be painted in the light that this is malicious. It's to protect Carney. This is specifically against Ruby. The honest fact is that we don't know whether or not these allegations are true. And I think given their serious nature, we can't just discount them entirely and say that, well, this is a witch hunt or this is rigged, et cetera, et cetera. We need to look at the possibility that they are true. And we also need to look at the possibility that they aren't true. The reality is that we don't have all the information here. And I imagine that all of that information was shared with Ruby during that committee meeting. So until it's shared with the public, we'll never know the truth.
Well, and the last thing to consider is the Liberal Party has to be very careful when making any of these types of allegations, because if they are false, Ruby could sue them. She could take them to court. And if they are made up, that's going to be a serious result in a court case and a very black stain on the Liberal Party. So if the Liberal Party, is serious about these allegations, they better have all of their ducks lined up in a row in terms of their evidence, because if they don't, then Ruby, give him hell, take him to court. If you were that certain that all of this is unfounded, take him to court and just tear them down, expose them. But will you do that? I guess we'll see, folks.